Hello, dear listeners. Welcome to the ECM podcast. I'm Caroline Fontagneux, and I'm very happy to host this series that will take you behind the scenes of new music on ECM Records. In this new episode, I'm meeting saxophonist, composer, and poet Oded Tzur to discuss his latest ECM album, produced by Manfred Eicher, My Prophet. Oded talks about love, faith, and how music can save lives. Before we came in, I listened back to the first episode that we recorded together. And it was really nice. It was really nice to listen to it. Yeah. And to remember we were sitting at this table and we were just chatting about it. And that was one of my first podcast episodes. So thank you again for having been a guest on one of the first episodes. Thanks for coming back. So yeah, we recorded it in June 2022. So,
Wow. Exactly 2 years.
Exactly 2 years ago. Yeah. And a lot has happened.
Yeah.
In your career, in your music, in your art, in your inspirations, and in your sound too. How are you today?
Well, I think that after that last album, what I felt was that I just want to stay with that material, because I wrote that album about my wife, and I didn't feel like there's anything else that I would do that would be as important or as meaningful. So actually I just wanted to stop time and stay there. Actually, it kind of feels like I should have.
No. But did you feel, or do you feel like you didn't want to play anymore?
I didn't want to play anything else.
You wanted to play that over and over.
I wanted to just play that.
We're ending this podcast episode from 2 years ago with you saying, "This is the best thing I've ever done."
Yeah.
And I don't think I will ever be able to record something better.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are, 2 years later. You recorded something else.
Yeah.
Was it a hard time for you to just kind of mourn this?
Yeah, because I never thought that it would happen to me. I was always disappointed with any album that I have made before that. I never thought it's going to happen. People always say nothing is perfect. You're never going to be fully happy with something. And I was actually fully happy with that. I felt that it had all kinds of moments in it, but it was full of love.
Yeah, but the pressure is so high then.
Exactly. So that's why I didn't want to do anything else. I wanted to just stay with that. But I guess the solution for me eventually was that I decided to make another album about my wife. And I just said, well, no one could stop me the first time. Who's going to stop me now? And here we are. So this album, the idea was to say, this is a prequel. So I'm going to try to start with her childhood and go all the way until the moment, or the symbolic moment, when she becomes herself. She becomes the person that we know from the previous album. And sort of wonder how that happened. So the question that I'm always baffled with is, how is she herself? And I was just trying to figure that out, I guess, through the composition.
Yeah. We were also talking about Indian classical music in Raga and the art of portrait that Raga can be. Portrait of a person or a feeling or a moment or anything.
Right.
But yeah, Isabella was a portrait of Isabella, your wife.
Right.
And so My Prophet is the portrait of what was Isabella?
No, I think it's still a portrait of Isabella, but it is a picture that is maybe in motion. Maybe it's a little bit more of a film than a photo. And it is full of questions of, okay, so how does it happen that any of us become who we are?
Is there a really answer to that question?
I don't know. I'm fascinated by the question though.
Did you ask this question about yourself in your life, or it's just about Isabella because she's so fascinating?
Well, I ask her that all the time. recently she started showing me this photo of her grandmother that she looks exactly like her. So she always says, well, this, you see, this is how I look like this, at least. Because I always ask her how. She's so beautiful. Anyway, I started just by trying to tell that story. But as I was composing it, I did start asking, how do I became who I am, and how do any of us? And since it was composed at a particular moment in time, and it was recorded in a particular moment in time, another question was very present as well, which is that we lose ourselves 20 times a day, or at least I know that I do. And so how do I find myself again? What are the forces that help us remember who we are when we lose it? And so it's not only how do we become ourselves in the first place, but how do we become ourselves or find ourselves again throughout our lives in all of these moments.
What do you mean losing ourselves?
Well, anything from being distracted by the pressures of everyday life to losing ourselves as a society in a broader sense. All of those things. And I'm very interested in whether or not there are ways for us to reconnect with those things that we know. It's not anything that we need to figure out. We are in touch with that, but we lose touch with that, I think, all the time. It's just a pathology of human beings.
Still in the previous podcast episode that we recorded together, you were saying that Here Be Dragons, your first ECM album, was the main feeling that the music was based on was fear, and that Isabella was based on love. So what would be the feeling that My Prophet is based on?
Faith.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair.
Yeah.
And the good news is, it's never-ending inspiration to write about your wife. Do you know that maybe you can be a little bit more in peace with this fear that you had last time, being like, oh no, now that I wrote that, what am I going to write about? But just,
Yeah.
It
does feel like a journey that I can just continue being on, rather than one-off, as I felt last time. That's true.
Yeah, but then also fear, then love, then faith is a very growing and encouraging evolution of, feelings. It's just it opens the conversation broader and broader, I guess.
Right.
I wonder what's going to be the next one, but no, we're not there. So when was this music composed?
It was composed, I guess, since late 2022, all the way until the recording, which is, the middle of 2023. Yeah.
And it came to you naturally?
I think so, yeah. I wrote 2 songs about children before. One is Welcome, about my niece Abigail, and Noam, about my nephew Noam. And I just was fascinated by the idea of writing a song about my wife as a child. So every morning at breakfast I was telling her in the kitchen, now I'm going to write a song about child you.
And it happened.
So yeah, and that's the name of the song.
And you wanted to write about her sister too.
Right.
Renata is your wife's sister.
That's right. I wanted to write that song in the previous album, but I wasn't ready. I didn't know how to go about it. But this time it worked out, and it's so important because when you think about how a person becomes themselves and what are the tenets of their being, for Isabella, really her sister is a monumentally important facet of who she is. And without Renata, there would be no Isabella. She would just be a different person.
Yeah.
And so it was wonderful to be able to write that. And when Renata visited us in New York, because she lives in Brazil, I made her listen to the song, and she really loved it. So
Did she recognize herself?
I don't know, I'll have to ask her, but I think that she recognized something. That's the thing also when we recorded it. I felt so at a loss in so many different ways because of the moment in which the recording was set, and was so confused about so many things in the world itself. And that moment of loss really pushed me to figure out what it is that I do know. And I just felt that, for example, this was one of those moments when I played the song Renata. I felt that I know how much Isabella loves her sister. I know that. Maybe I know nothing else about this world and what it means to be human, but I know about my wife loving her sister so much. So I'm just going to focus on that. And that those moments kind of studied throughout the recording. They really saved me.
Let's talk about it. You recorded in France
Yeah.
in November 2023.
Mm-hmm.
The date was set for months.
Yeah.
It was at the end of a tour that was building in Europe.
Right.
So the tour was in Europe in October.
Yeah.
And the world was shaken by October 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And the world today in June 2024 is still shaking right now.
Right.
Did you consider canceling the recording or the tour?
Every moment of every day.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you record an album about love?
Yeah.
At a time like this, it makes no sense. So when we did end up going on the tour, there were definitely moments that I didn't know what to say or what to do. I froze on stage pretty much every night, played the worst concerts of my life. And after the concert was over, I just had to go and sob in the dressing room. Because it wasn't only October 7th at that point in time, it was also the response and what was happening in the war that is still going on until today. And I wasn't able to reconcile being on stage, playing music that I wrote about my life and my wife. I have this Freudian slip. Every time I want to say my wife, I say my life.
It's not a slip.
and every time I want to say my life, I also say my wife. It's been like this for years. Anyway, this album that I wrote about her, it was just total chaos and a total loss of any sense. And eventually, like I said, we went into the studio and made the album, but it took on this strange shape that I didn't expect it to take. I thought I'm going to be in the studio and I'm going to tell this wonderful story of the most wonderful person and how they came to be. But I wasn't able to even think about anything. And I was, we woke up at the hotel, had breakfast. Manfred and I were also talking about what's going on, and the band, everyone, we were all so distraught about what we were seeing. Then we had to go to the studio and do a sound check and play. So what I found that helped me was just that. Even if I don't know anything else, I know about this one person. I know a lot about her, and I can say that maybe that's the beginning. And like you said, this is end of May 2024. The world is, I feel, just as lost as I felt back then. I think humanity has completely lost its mind. I think that's not a difficult thing to agree on. And the album is released at this time. So it was both recorded and is released in a very, very complicated moment in history. So I guess the greatest wish that I have, and I don't want to sound too optimistic, or I'm not under any illusion that instrumental music like this has a specific spot in the world that we live in, but if it could even remind one person that listens to it of something that they know and forgot, then that would be really, meaningful for me, because that's what it did for me when I was recording it.
Last time when you recorded Isabelle in the studio, you told me the story of Manfred saying, keep it personal.
Yeah.
Is it an advice or a direction that stayed with you
Totally.
when you recorded this too?
Very much so, yeah. I think that was an advice that helped me in this process of making music about someone that is so close to me. And indeed, this time in the studio, I felt like it was already kind of set in motion in this way. So he didn't have to say it, but he listened.
And he was there too this
Yeah.
time. How was it?
It was good. I think that we had mutual faith, mutual trust
Yeah.
in each other, and we recorded the music in a pretty seamless way. Yeah.
Does having your producer's trust help, or does it have any kind of impact in the music in the moment of the recording?
I think it definitely helps. I think also Manfred, what's special about him is that he listens so carefully, and his ears are amazing. I think the number one and number two best ears on the planet are his. I don't know which side is which, but he has the best ears that I've ever seen. And the way that he's able to hear the music and place the instruments in the mix in harmony with each other is astonishing. It's really a beautiful thing to witness.
Were you there for the mix?
Yeah, we did the mix on the third day
Yeah.
of the recording.
That was an easy process.
Yeah, very much so.
Let's talk a little bit about the band.
Mm.
So, Nitai Hershkovits on piano, Petros Klampanis on bass. They both were with you for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you can talk about them more beautifully than you already have in this podcast. But to start with them, is the relationship evolving, or is there a limit to the trust? Meaning, when you reached a certain level of trust and love and understanding with each other, can you go further?
I think it does. I actually think that nothing really stays the same in this way, right? It either evolves or goes somewhere else. And I think that with Petros and Nitai, it's definitely been a journey of mutual evolution. I wouldn't have been the musician that I am today without Nitai and Petros. Hearing how they play the music together with me, seeing, for example, how Nitai always is able to take it to this other place that I would have never imagined. And all of a sudden you find yourself there. And you ask, wait, but how did we get here? There wasn't any moment. It's a little bit like the story of becoming yourself. There was never a moment where you just were getting a letter in the mail, okay, hello, now you are you. It just happened without you noticing. And listening to him play is a little bit like that. You are transported to another world, a beautiful world, with all of these colors. And there was never a moment when you kind of realized that it was happening to you. And I really am very grateful for that. And same thing with Petros, his trust in the music and the level of trust that he inspires in him. You know, there's just never any doubt. You just know that that note in the bass is going to be there.
The groundedness of Petros.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. That and nothing else that isn't needed. Only what's needed. And that kind of frees you from having to explain anything, for lack of a better word. It allows you to also only say what you think is absolutely needed. But that all comes from him. He has that ability. If you hang out with him on the train between one show and another, he will be the same.
Yeah, he's never saying
Right?
words that are not needed to.
Exactly.
it's very special to change drummers, and I know the trust and relationship and everything that Jonathan Blake was bringing to the band and to those albums that wouldn't be what they are without him. And when he made a decision to leave the band, you understood, of course, but it must have been really scary to imagine how I'm going to find someone who's going to bring something new.
For sure.
Tell me the story about this young Brazilian drummer.
Yeah, so it really came out of nowhere, or at least not in a way that I expected, because I was just in Brazil and I was asked to do this one show in a club in the city Belo Horizonte, and the house band in that club included this young drummer that I've never heard of before, whose name was Cyrano Almeida. And this very cool guy with amazing hair and sunglasses just started hitting the cymbals with a stick, and I was like, wow, what is that? And I fell in love with him in first sight. I fell in love with him from the beginning. He just has a pulse that shapes the notes of the music that is very, very special. And it's kind of almost paradoxical to me, at least when I listen to him, because at the same time there's something very gentle about it, very nuanced, and also very just, the party started. Just like, open a beer and like relax because we are here and the party started. And every note that he hits the drum, it just feels like both of those things at the same time. So I love him and what he brings to the music. So I'm very happy that we found each other and made this album together.
How would you like people to feel after they heard My Prophet?
I would like them to remember maybe something of the most important things in life. Maybe just one thing. That maybe if they are like me, they usually forget about. And go on living and worrying and being scared and being upset and being angry and being disappointed with the world. What I think that music can do for us is always remind us of the fact that those things are always there, whether we notice them or not. But they are always there. We are the ones that forget, right? When we forget, that can also have consequences. We do a lot of terrible things when we forget. But music is always there. And music always has the power to remind us of those things. So that is my greatest wish, actually. I don't know if we have achieved this in this album, but I know that music can do that.
Oded Tzur about his new ECM album, My Prophet. Thank you for joining, choosing, and listening to us. We just reached 100,000 downloads of this very ECM podcast, and your fidelity means a lot. So thank you, dear listeners. I'm Caroline Fontanier, and I look forward to sharing more music with you in the next episode.